Welcome to Leadership in the Line of Fire with your host, Brad Hauck. Join Brad as he dives into the heat of leadership challenges, where the flames of business uncertainty meet the hard-earned lessons of firefighting. Embrace change, master agility, and become the trusted leader guiding your team through the smoke. Get ready to ignite your leadership journey.
Welcome back to Firefighter Leadership. Today we're tackling a tough but critical topic. What happens when a leader gets tired? We all hit that point. Long deployments, back-to-back call-outs, mental fatigue from juggling life outside the station. It all adds up. And when it does, your leadership can slip in ways that affect safety, crew performance, and trust. In this episode, I'm going to break down the most common mistakes leaders make when they're worn out, and more importantly, how to recognize and avoid them before they put your crew at risk. You've probably done one or two of these. I have. Let's unpack them together and make sure that even when we're running on empty, we don't let the team down. Fatigue is one of those things that really hits firefighters hard. In fact, it's something that we don't think about enough. And it's something that I certainly have started focusing on over the last couple of years. We've had an excessive amount of call-outs that have required us to do long hours. A few years ago, I was caught up on a night shift. We were out on the fire all night, literally been up since 4 o'clock the morning before, got the call out at 6, went out to where the fire was, so a good hour and a half's drive, hour and a half. And when I got there, we sat around for about an hour till they finally deployed us because they didn't realize we were actually there. Called in all these crews, but didn't realize we were there. So we got to the fire around probably, I reckon, about 11. And then we were on structural protection on top of a hill, with flames coming up, winds gusting up to 100 kilometers an hour through the bush, and quite a stressful night. And realistically, it got caught up and it didn't really take off straight away. So we sat there for many hours as we watched the fire slowly come towards us. And that was very stressful. Eventually, it settled a bit because it hit an outcrop and people just decided we're going to have a bit of a rest. Anyway, about 5 o'clock in the morning, I was not sleeping because I was in charge of the whole sector. And I got up and went for a walk. And then I noticed the flames had started to lick up over the edge of the cliffs near where we were and were starting to race across the ground. And we got involved in the fire and worked on controlling the fire, etc. But eventually people were getting exhausted and trying to get replaced. But we weren't getting replacement crews in. I mean, given the nature of the fire, we couldn't release the crews. But slowly that started to happen. But what eventually happened was it wasn't until 2:30 in the afternoon that I myself and my crew got released, which meant that we'd been going since 4 o'clock in the morning before. Now, some people would say, oh, that's not long, and doctors go for 2 or 3 days. I don't. And we went back, we checked in with command, and we drove home. Now, I'll be honest, I don't remember the drive home at all. I was so tired. How he drove that hour, I have no idea. We kept talking to try and keep each other awake. But then we got back to the station, we put the truck away, we did all of that sort of stuff, and then we had to go home. I had to get in my own car then and drive another 10 minutes home, and I don't know how I didn't fall asleep. So very dangerous thing, and yet no one said anything about it. No one even realized it, I don't think. And to this day, still one of the things that scares me most is that drive home after a fire, because so many times we get a call out, we're out there till late hours, and then we've got 2 hours drive home from the bush or somewhere. So fatigue is a killer, and we really need to remember that we need to manage it better, and especially for ourselves as leaders. Let's get into the 5 mistakes exhausted leaders make. First one is pushing through fatigue without speaking up, and why it's dangerous. I've just told you the story. It's extremely dangerous. It could get you killed. Fatigue leads to mistakes. The more fatigued you are, the more likely you are not to think clearly. And there's plenty of studies on this. It's the equivalent of being drunk. There's so many different things that you can look up online of proper studies done on people who were fatigued and how it affects their brain function. So mistakes can be very costly as a firefighter, as you well know, and we can't afford to be making them, especially when we're running teams. In my case, in the story, I was running a whole sector, so I had 7 to 10 trucks at any one time in that sector. And I can't afford to be making mistakes with those people's lives. One of the biggest things I see is we don't crack down on fatigue enough as volunteers. Only recently I went to a fire. We drove 2 hours out to a country area and we were told we were going on night shift. Now, we had been told we were on swing shift or day shift. To get out there after working all day and then be told we're going on night shift was a no-no. And they were told that wasn't happening. And luckily enough, the command took that under advisement and actually sent us to our accommodation. But to suddenly throw people who've been working all day, some of us in the sun doing hard physical labour, onto a night shift was extremely dangerous. And yet no one gave it a second thought. A stupid thing to do by anyone's standard. So with volunteers, often we are turning up to a fire of an evening after we've been working all day. And it is something that we have to really consider. I know in the new crew leaders course, it's actually a question that's asked. When a crew goes to the station and the truck's about to roll out, the crew leader actually has to ask the members who have turned up to the fire, have you been working all day? What's your fatigue level? Which I think is a really positive step forward. Driving home, obviously, after a fire is the most dangerous time because you're pushing through that fatigue and, you could drive yourself straight into a pole because you're going to micro sleep on the way home. Just because I go 10 minutes, I know people that are going to go half an hour from the station and they're going to have to drive through city traffic, in our case, to get to their house. So that could be very dangerous for them and for everybody else on the road. And the other thing that I've discovered, and especially as I get older, is that you don't sleep properly after you've done a night shift for about 2 days. Even if you're doing night shift regularly, you'll still find that you will have an effect on your sleep cycle, and that affects how you nap, everything. So I often hear people say they got called out, they did a night shift because they were in action the whole time, and then for the next 2 days they were written off, which means from our perspective as a volunteer service, you can't get people back on the trucks because they're not sleeping properly. So therefore they're fatigued and they can't turn out. And if they do turn out, they're actually not all that much use to you. So we need to be aware as leaders that pushing through fatigue without speaking up about it and making sure your crews are pulled off the fireground, sometimes against their wishes, is absolutely essential. Because if we don't, someone's going to die or get permanently injured. So take it very seriously. And if you have to put your foot down as the leader to pull a crew off or pull a particular firefighter off the fireground and send them home, even if they're complaining and whinging and telling you, how they feel fine, you have to do it. Take responsibility. That's why you're in command. Second thing, skipping crew checks or safety briefs when under pressure. When you rush a briefing, people are likely to miss something important. When you're fatigued, you tend to drop things that you would normally do because you think they're not as important because you're not thinking clearly. Regularly get all your crews to also check in when they're on the fireground because you can lose a crew. You don't want to leave anyone behind and then they're left on their own out of the fireground and wondering where everybody is. And I can tell you from my own experience, I have been that crew that's been left on the fireground and it was very frustrating. I understood how it could happen and it was okay. I was safe in who I was and what I was doing at that time and what my crew was doing. So it wasn't like I was in danger, but it was just the fact of, they left us. Now, I can also say, as a person in command, I have accidentally left crews on the ground once. And I say once because it's not a mistake I'll ever make again. It was horrifying. Now, they were perfectly safe, but they were busy and they were out of radio contact. And I thought they'd gone in and come out. No excuses. I should have triple checked. When you're tired, you don't think clearly and you miss these steps, and that's how crews get left behind. Being under pressure is no excuse. If you find that you're having trouble remembering all the things you got to do, build a checklist. I've said this so many times. Having a checklist you can open up on your phone, so you carry it with you. You don't need to log in anywhere. It's on your notes. But you can go through and go, okay, before I close command or before we leave the fireground, whatever your checklist is, I need to get every crew checked in and tick them off. I need to do this and this. Don't leave yourself with excuses. Take the time beforehand to create these things and store them for your own use. Not everybody has to be using them, but if they work well, you can share them with others. Number 3, losing awareness of your team's mental state during long shifts. You need to keep an eye on your people. It's really important. Yes, you're getting fatigued, but so are they. And If you haven't found out what they've done before they've turned up to the fire, you've got no idea how fatigued they are. You don't know how they slept last night. You don't know what they did the night before. They could have been away all weekend partying. Who knows? But keep an eye on your people. Watch how they're walking. Watch how they respond. Make sure that they're drinking and eating. And even things like how much time have they spent in the smoke, because it all affects us differently depending on our fatigue levels. Again, if you're not watching them, they're not going to be watching themselves probably, because they're going to be focused on the fire. So as a team leader, it's your job really to keep an eye on your people and to mention it to them. Keep an eye on each other. Make sure that you're aware of your partner or the other members of the crew, what they're doing, where they're at. We need to keep an eye on each other at all times, which, look, it's something that we do all the time as firefighters, but we need to keep thinking about it because it's so important that we do that. Watch how they react to things. Are they arcing up? Are they short-tempered? Are they showing up signs that something's not right? And that could be caused by multiple things. They could be dehydrated. They could be exhausted. They might not have eaten. Who knows? But as I said, you need to watch for those signs that something's happening. They're not always obvious, but everybody has them. And the longer you work with the crew and with the other members of your brigade or your station, the more you'll know what their little telltale signs are. We all have them. We all know they're there. So keep an eye on those as well. And remember to always think about yourself first. When you fly on a plane, the first thing they say is oxygen will drop from the ceiling. Make sure you put your mask on first before you help others. That's really true. They're relying on you as the leader. And if you're fatigued and you're not reacting properly, then you need to make sure you pull yourself off the fire ground and get replaced as soon as possible. If you're not looking out for yourself, you're going to crash. And the problem is, as the leader, that means you could take out a whole crew because they can't go on the ground without you, because you're the station officer or you're the crew leader. Whatever it is, think about that. You affect a larger group of people because you're higher up in rank. And even if you're a leader who's a lower level in rank, it doesn't matter. Take responsibility for yourself. It's really important. You can't help others if you don't help yourself first. Number 4, making rash decisions because of burnout or frustration. This is a good one because you often see people do this. They're getting burnt out, they're getting tired, and they're frustrated with the situation. They don't like the commands that have come down from up top, or they're annoyed at the people that aren't doing what they asked them to do, whatever it is. And they stop taking time to actually evaluate the decisions they're making because they're tired, because they're getting burnt out, because they're frustrated. Their mind's caught up in what's going on around them and they're not thinking properly. So make sure you take time to evaluate things before you make a decision. We've all been there at 4 a.m. and all hell breaks loose. You've been there all night. It's been quiet. And when it's quiet, there's nothing to do. So your body's not switched on. You start to slow down. And then suddenly the flame arrives or whatever happens and all hell breaks loose and you're busy. But you're actually mentally fatigued in many ways, let alone physically fatigued. So, you'll make rash decisions and you won't think about things properly. Take a breath, take a minute to stop, look at what's going on, ask questions, and then take action after you've made a plan, of course. People are relying on you, so remember that. Also, run your decisions by someone else or by your crew. You don't have to make all the decisions yourself. There is nothing wrong with asking another senior firefighter or someone that you trust and respect, I'm thinking of doing this. Any thoughts? And they'll probably say, yeah, that sounds great. Or they might say, oh, have you checked where those other crews are before we put fire on the ground or whatever? But it never hurts to run your decisions past someone else. Now, it's not always possible. Sometimes if you're a divisional commander and you're off by yourself with a scribe or off by yourself full stop, you might not be in the position where you can run those by someone. But if it's a really big decision and it could put crews in danger, there's nothing wrong with making a phone call and actually connecting with someone, that you respect and getting a second decision on that. Don't make stupid decisions just because you didn't take the time to think them through. Lastly, withdrawing instead of stepping up when your crew needs leadership. This is So true in many ways. People get tired and they pull back into themselves. And meanwhile, their crew's looking at them going, hey, we need you. Don't let it happen to you, okay? You need to set the example, and that means you need to walk the walk. If you put your name down, if you go on the truck, then, suck it up. Make sure that you made the decision you're fatigued and didn't go before you get there. Don't get there and find out you're tired. Your crew is going to be looking to you for leadership. They always are. That's part of it. They're junior firefighters in many cases, and they need to see someone who's strong above them, who's rational, who thinks clearly, and does safe things and makes sure that they're safe, because they're only new. And the same goes for any firefighter. We're putting our lives in each other's hands. We don't want some idiot doing something stupid. So if you're already tired before you arrive, it makes it hard to stay positive. So don't take the call. If you're a volunteer and you're tired, don't take the call if you're fatigued. That's just dangerous. Push it back. Let someone else take command. Or if necessary, they need to call another brigade. Let them call in another station. That's fine. You're a volunteer. In my case, obviously paid firefighters, it's a different story. You have shifts and you have things that you must abide by because of fatigue. People are relying on you, so make sure you remember that. A mistake can get someone dead or injured. And I think this is an overarching one that I always come back to. When I talk about fatigue and decisions and things like that on the fire ground, the overarching thing that I always come back to is this dangerous and could someone get dead? And that sounds terrible, but it's a real thing. Fire kills people, and so does trees when they fall or trucks when they crash. You can always fall back. Yes, you might lose some assets. Yes, you might lose some bush, but you can't afford to lose each other. So when people are relying on you, make sure that you're getting enough sleep. Make sure that you're taking enough time off the fire ground. Make sure that you're scheduling yourself so that you're getting your work done if you're working a day job or running a business or whatever it happens to be. But take responsibility, because mistakes can be very costly. All right, so these are 5 mistakes that we need to watch out for when exhaustion starts to creep in. Leadership doesn't stop when the tank's low, but neither should your self-awareness and the support systems you build around yourself. The truth is you can't lead well if you're constantly burnt out. So check yourself, check your team, and ask for backup when you need it. Get another crew in. That's not weakness. That's actually very smart operational leadership. If today's episode hit home, take 60 seconds to share it with another firefighter you trust. These conversations matter, and if you haven't already, subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I've got more real-world leadership tools coming your way. Until next time, stay sharp, stay safe, and keep leading from the front.
Thank you for tuning in to Leadership in the Line of Fire. If today's episode sparked some insights, please share it with your friends and colleagues. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Your support fuels this journey. Join us next time as we continue to explore leadership lessons from the fire line. Until then, keep leading with courage and agility.